You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm the werewolf that's inside of Zach's rotting flesh.
Yeah, looking. Well, you don't look rotting. You know, I mean, if you were rotting,
We're all rotting.
I
All
guess.
of us.
Yeah, I guess. You know,
Adam,
we're dying
all of us.
since day one, right? I mean, isn't that how it
Each
works?
day we die a little more. I learned
Yeah.
that from the Teen Girl Squad, and I fully believe death. It comes for us all. Its specter is hanging over us.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you can. Apparently, according to comics, you can, you know, fall in love with death. You can fight
Yes.
off death.
Yes.
You can do death's bidding. Like, there's lots of things you could do with death in the Marvel universe.
Okay, that's not a Marvel Universe thing. That's just like culturally, we're all very into the idea of the personification of death. We've been doing that. I don't want to say since Mesopotamian times because I'll be real. I haven't read a lot of Mesopotamian literature. But
Me neither.
I've got to imagine folks have been thinking about the Pale Spectre for quite some time.
Well, luckily we have a character in the X-Men pantheon who really has a direct line to death. And that, of course, is one Ms. Danny Moonstar.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Jean Grey. Womp womp.
Wah,
Look at
wah,
that.
wah.
It's the easy joke.
Zach, I believe we have a Patreon patron to thank for requesting this Danny versus Death episode.
We absolutely do. I want to give a big ol' shout out, welcome, thank you to Patreon supporter Nathan. If you'd like to be like Nathan, you can go over to patreon.com/battleoftheatom. Reach deep into your hearts and pocketbooks and toss a couple of coins right into our coffers. If you do that, you get a whole episode based around a comic concept idea of your choosing. And Nathan wanted us to talk about that time Danny fought death.
Yeah, this is part of a series of New Mutant issues. We've delved into this a little bit in the 40s, where Claremont's kind of doing these individual character spotlights. So this is post Secret Wars 2.
Secret Wars 2, the worst one.
Yeah, the team is not really together. So Chris is doing his kind of like, we're all apart and then we'll get back together later thing.
He's just giving everyone a moment. And I like that. Because in Secret Wars 2, the New Mutants die. We've covered that on the podcast.
Right.
The Beyonder brings them back. Hey, and by the way, folks, if you were not, and I don't know why you would be if you're listening to this podcast, but if you were not a devotee of 80s Marvel comics, you might see the upcoming feature films talking about Secret Wars and think, "Ooh, is the Beyonder going to be in this? Is that going to be good?" And folks, the answer is going to be no. The Beyonder's never been a good character. There's folks out there that are like, "Oh, Kang is so great." No one likes Kang. Kurt Busiek likes Kang, and Avengers freaks like Kang. No one else likes Kang. People are going to be like, "Oh, the Sentry." Who likes the Sentry? Really? Who likes the Sentry? The Beyonder's worse than all of them. The Beyonder
needs Spider-Man to teach him how to poop. It's not a great character.
I wish we were doing a joke about that. That's not even in a comedy comic. That's supposed to be a serious comic.
Yes. I saw Jim Shooter this past weekend at
You saw Jazzy Jim Shooter this weekend.
Yes, I sure did. I'm not sure how jazzy he looked. He's an older fella, but he was there. He was there.
I don't know why you didn't invite him on the podcast so we could ask him what he was thinking so many times. I don't want to relitigate the past. I just want to know about every decision he's ever made. What? I just want to ask him about Fallen Angels too. That's all.
Sure. I did not bother to even broach any subject with Mr.
Oh,
Shooter.
bud, you've been to cons with me. You know, I would have been like, hey, Jim, Fallen Angels 2 question for you. And he'd say, I don't remember that comic from 50 years ago that didn't even come out. I'm just kidding. He would absolutely remember the comic that he canceled because he was like, we're not doing bestiality in a Marvel comic in the 80s. What are you talking about? I don't know if folks know about that in Fallen Angels 2, do they?
Yeah.
Have we talked about how it's a bunch of bestiality in it?
There did seem to be the case. So this comic has neither bestiality nor Jim Shooter involved. This is New Mutants.
This comic absolutely has Jim Shooter involved. He's the editor-in-chief.
Okay. Well, no, he's the EIC, but he's not the editor. And in a sense, he's the editor.
Sure, but
okay. So this is
it's
New
been
Mutants.
out of Secret Wars 2. You can't say Jim Shooter's not even a little involved.
This is New Mutants number 41. It is.
And there's a little Jim Shooter in it.
It is written by Chris Claremont. I will get these credits out. This is penciled by an individual who, unfortunately, I just learned before we came on the air, died today.
Oh.
And that is the now late Jackson, sometimes credited Butch Geis, who had a pretty good, solid run on X Factor, New Mutants. Gave us the absolutely bizarre X Factor Prisoner of Love. So our condolences to his family and the comics community at large for the late Jackson Geis.
Jackson Geis.
Yeah.
I like Jackson Geis's art in this. Like, here's the thing. That first page with the silhouette shadowed Cheyenne warrior, and look, I don't know how accurate it is. It does look cool.
Well, Jackson has the benefit of having inker extraordinary Terry Austin here, who I believe in a recent episode, maybe just even last episode, you said something along the lines that Terry Austin makes everybody look a little bit like John Byrne. I feel like Terry Austin makes everybody look a little bit like Art Adams. But that's mainly because I've read Asgardian Wars so many times, and I definitely got that vibe here.
I'm getting looking at this, I'm getting a little Art Adams. Like, there's a lot of lines, and I'm not saying no. And you don't normally see this many lines with Jackson Geis.
No, it's definitely not his normal style. But Danny is returning home to her now non-demon bear parents, and is going to have a run-in with a childhood friend who he's not great.
He's super racist towards her. He's just a jerk.
Yeah, that's Mr. Pat Roberts.
Pat's a racist jerk to Danny. Like, 80s bully to the T. And he sucks.
I gotta ask, do you think that Chris Claremont called this character Pat Roberts in an homage to noted televangelist Pat Robertson?
I mean, it's all I can think about. It's 1983. And Chris Claremont has already done a comic where the most evil person in humanity was a televangelist. So, like, it would be hard for me to think that name came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, Danny has history with this fella. I guess when they were kids, there was a little bit of an incident with the two of them, and he simultaneously is very racist and hates her and goes so far as to try and, I guess, almost to like hit her.
He's going to hurt her
at the shopping mall, and yet in his sick or twisted mind, he's also kind of in love with her. So
there's a lot going on here. It's like he's overcompensating for the fact that he is both physically and emotionally attracted to her.
Yes.
And then pushing the racism like up to 11 about it. Like, Pat is an interesting character because Claremont gives him additional dynamics, and that is essential for this story, is that Pat is not a irredeemable caricature character. Like, he does terrible things. He also has some depth to his personality, you know? Like,
Well,
he's not one dimensional.
no. I mean, I don't
He has
know
some
if
terrible
he's
dimensions, but he's not one dimensional.
right. Yeah, there's depth to this character, which is important because the death that Danny is trying to fight off is Danny, of course, as a Valkyrie now, has the power to see who is going to be claimed by death. And she sees death over Pat Roberts and is like, oh God, like this guy is just being the absolute worst to me. And yet, as a superhero, should I feel compelled to like care and or try and save this terrible person, which is an interesting setup for this character.
So one thing that I've been thinking about, because a lot of these comics that we're talking about this, actually all the comics we're talking about this week are about Danny as a Valkyrie specifically.
Yes.
I think Danny becoming a Valkyrie is one of the most interesting things you can do with the character because of the avenues that it opens up.
Mhm.
It plays straight into how she has been characterized and the general themes around fear and death that have been around her since the beginning, without directly tying it to like a mystic native archetype,
Right.
which, you know, Claremont has Demon Bear. I love Demon Bear. You could make a very compelling argument about how Demon Bear is a very stereotypical native story to tell.
Mhm.
And by giving her a completely remote, completely unattached Norse mythology thing to layer on top of her, to have to deal with the fact that literally the whitest of white men have now given her this power.
Mhm.
And how does that play with her Cheyenne heritage while still tying into her general themes of like death? And it's a really good add to this character. It opens up a lot of more complex things to do with Danny, who's probably Claremont's most nuanced character in the New Mutants.
Definitely has a lot of potential. I don't know if it's always explored, but this is one of those issues where we're really getting into it because her parents have really taken on the role of like rescuing people from terrible weather that's coming through their neighborhood, not letting Danny help. So she doesn't feel kind of like completely at home. She's not sure what her
Well,
relationship with the rest of the New Mutants
she's
are.
gone away at this point. That's it. That's the other beautiful thing about this, is it is a homecoming story about realizing that home is not where it used to be. No matter everything that has happened, everything that she has done to bring her parents back, she has grown past this place. So
Right.
how does she make her own way in this world? Like,
Yeah. The
and part of that
problem.
is
Oh,
I'm a
go ahead.
Valkyrie now.
Yeah, and that, gives her new avenues. Unfortunately, in her attempts to fight off death, she maybe can postpone death for Pat Roberts, but he is too far gone at the end of this issue to ultimately be saved. So she also has to grapple with the fact that while she can see it coming, she can't always stop it.
Yeah, for folks who haven't read this, there's a snowstorm. Pat Roberts is a diabetic, uh, and has decided in the middle of this snowstorm to do one of the most 1980s things that you can do, and drink a beer in his pickup truck. Does throw the rest of the six pack onto the ground, and it breaks his insulin. So even though he then gets into a car crash,
It's pretty bad. Like it's a number of inciting incidents. Danny does manage to get him into a cave, and is really conversing with death. The cover features her in a sort of old west shootout. That's not really what's happening in this issue. She's having this conversation with a visualization of death that looks like an older Native American woman who is
well,
basically. Go ahead.
before before that, I think this is so important.
Yeah.
When she is grappling with death, when she is fighting with death for the life of Pat, he is a cowboy. He
Right.
is a
Yes.
cowboy who is racist to her, who is everything that she has ever feared and like hated, just like the personification of what America did to her entire culture. She shoots him, wins, feels victorious about this, but then at the hospital, Death shows up a little bit differently.
Yeah, and this is the vision of Death that, you know, is kind of rationalizing with Danny and saying, hey, you know, you fought a good fight, but this is not going to work out in the way that you want it to. And it's interesting to see how you could see that it might even just be Danny's internal mind that is making these interpretations, you know?
Right, because of her vision powers and all of that, or like
Yeah,
her
the visualization
illusions.
of deepest fears and things like that. So
It's never like specified. It's not
no,
laid out to you what it is. There's a lot that you can infer from this, which again, I love ambiguous storytelling. I think, especially for things like this, that's the best way to do it, to let the readers draw their own conclusions and have them be smart enough, especially in Marvel where there is so much fantastical stuff, so that the alternative is, yeah, this could be real. It's like, I'm going to go on a tangent here. Can I go on one tangent for
yeah,
a second?
please.
One of my least favorite things about Moon Knight comics in
Mhm.
recent years is that they've gotten rid of any ambiguity that Mark Spector is crazy or that Mark Spector is talking to an actual god. They've just made
Oh,
Khonshu an actual like active participant,
sure.
where for most Moon Knight comics, it was questionable whether
Hmm,
Khonshu was a figment of his imagination or an actual god that he was conversing with. And I
that's
think that's
interesting.
something that's been lost with the character. And to take it all back to Danny, I like that here you can read this as Death. You can also read this as her coming to terms with her situation and the
Yes.
situation that they found themselves in.
Yeah, I think as a standalone issue, this works really well. I will say that having just read the issue that we did last episode about Danny being attacked by bar patrons from Harry's, and knowing the history and cyclical nature of the way that Claremont kind of does these kinds of stories with her, the fact that this is getting brought up again, where there is this, you know, kind of group of racist white guys and Danny being put upon like this constantly over and over is it's I don't know. It,
It's not pleasant. It's also
it's
this is
not
something that,
unrealistic.
yeah, and that's something that I have struggled with over the years. And I mean, you can hear it on this podcast. I have become a lot more, I don't think tolerance the right word, but like just accepting of like that is what it is in these stories, and that in the individual moment, not all of that is like, all that is a valid story choice for a moment. The bigger issue is the general, in my mind, is the general macro trends of
Hmm.
that consistently happening to, you know, like for women in refrigerators, that consistently happening to women, or, you know, people of color being the first to die in horror movies, things like that. Like, I don't want to I don't want to focus on the tree and say this tree's bad when it's a whole forest issue, you know?
Yeah, it's
That's
just
something
this.
I've personally been juggling.
Yeah, this story could be told in a similar way, but leaving some of those elements out. I don't know if it's
I don't
better, worse.
I don't know if this specific story, I don't know if, cuz you have to hate Pat.
Yes.
You have Pat has to do something in 3 pages that makes you think that this guy deserves to die
Right.
in a public casual setting. You know, like
Mhm.
what is the what can this mundane dude do in a short amount of time? Like, I, from an economy of storytelling perspective, I get it. I don't know, man.
Well, it's an interesting comparison with the issue that comes right after it. First of all, the tagline at the end of this issue promises the New Mutants will all get back together next issue. They don't.
They
This
don't.
the very next issue is where Sam takes Lila Cheney home, and I think that might be a good place to start looking on our big old list as we rank this story.
Well, that's the thing, Adam. We've talked about how we've been talking about comics on this list. We talk about a lot of comics. In fact, we've talked about 1,029 different X-Men comics.
Oh my
The
goodness.
best of which, we ranked them all from best to worst, by the way. The best of which being the House of X, The Powers of 10. 250 best. It's Necrosha from X-Men Legacy. The 500th best is The Submergence of Japan. The 750th best is X-Men, Second Coming, Revelations, Hellbound. 1,000th is Amazing Adventures 9 through 11. That's where Magneto fights the Inhumans with his yoga powers. And the worst X-Men comic of all time is 2099 World of Tomorrow. Now, where do we have New Mutants 42?
New Mutants 42 is at 302. I would argue that this issue is better.
I would argue this issue is significantly better. I think Geis is doing killer work on this.
Mhm.
And Terry Austin's inks are fantastic on this. Like, really setting the bar high. I think Claremont is telling one of his most emotional, self-contained stories, doing it with nuance and depth. Like, this is a good one to me. Like,
I would agree. We have New
at
Mutants 35, which is the Magneto issue we talked about last episode at 288.
This is better.
This is better. All the way up at, where was I?
222?
222 is the New Mutants Summer Special. You know, I have a soft spot for that.
I know you have a soft spot for
I think
that,
you would probably argue that this is better than that.
I would argue that this is better than that. I'm gonna tell you something here.
Yeah.
Another one and done that I know you care about. You like.
Yes.
Uncanny X-Men 244 Ladies Night. That's at 155.
I don't think I would go that high.
I would. Because
really?
right below that is Uncanny X-Men 309, the Charles Xavier Amelia Voigt issue. I think this is just as good, if not better.
I honestly think this one's a little bit thinner. I think the art is good, but I do think that Claremont is... It's not that the themes are not strong here. It's not that the storytelling is not strong here. It is that he is recycling some things here, though. So I'm a little bit on the fence about this. Like, I'm all the way down at 212, which is Assault on Weapon Plus.
You know I love Assault on Weapon Plus.
I do think this is good character work, but I don't know if this actually gets... I don't know. Like, this is not better than Uncanny 143 Demon at 197, I don't think.
I think it is. I like Demon. Demon is a fun adventure story. It's thin. My floor. I'm going to tell you my floor, and then I want to hear your thoughts. My floor is 191 House of M. I think this is better than House of M.
Okay.
Because right below that is X-Men number 8 with Unis the Untouchable, which is very funny, but I think this is better than House of M. I think this is better than like that sad airport issue of Cable.
I would not go higher than 180, which is the first 3 issues of Bendis's Uncanny.
I'll accept that. We'll slot it below that, above Marvelous X-Men, a book I really like.
Yeah. Listen, this is a good story. I just think you and I might be a little bit in different spots about just how good it is. But Danny has really had relationships with death and avatars of death over and over again. And we're going to talk about one that's a little bit different. In fact, this next story, Danny doesn't fight death as much as fights for death. What is this, Zach?
This is New Mutants, Volume 3, number 11. It is a one-shot tie-in to the event Siege. Now, Adam, before we jump into this, do you know about Siege?
I don't know anything about Siege whatsoever. I do know that the covers had this like kind of 1/3 of them off to the side graphic with like a city on it or something, but I don't know.
So that's Asgard. That city is Asgard.
Yeah. Okay.
So Siege is, you could argue, and I think most people would, the culmination of Bendis's work on New Avengers.
Okay, sure.
He stays on the book for like 3 more years, 2 or 3 more years. But Siege is kind of like where the run of events that start with Disassembled come to their peak. It is the end of Dark Reign. It is the end of Norman Osborn running all of the stuff. He decides to take on Asgard, which is in Broxton, Oklahoma. Use his Dark Avengers to take it down, and Siege is just the story about that siege.
Okay.
So it's a Avengers Thor story.
Makes sense
And
that
he's
Danny would be involved then.
kind of, they always want to bring Danny in for that stuff, whether it fully works or not. And because here's the thing. People know, oh yeah, Danny, she's got Valkyrie powers. We should bring her into this Thor story. But she doesn't like hang out with any of the Thor people.
No, but this is written by Kieran Gillen, penciled and inked by Nico Henrikon? I'm not sure how to say Nico's last name.
I don't either. This is
Apologies.
early Gillen. Gillen is filling in on this issue, which is
Yes. But there
really
is
interesting to see.
a premise going into this particular issue that I guess Seb Wells would have set up, that like Danny kind of owes Hela a favor. So the New Mutants are in Vegas, and Danny takes an elevator up to the penthouse suite, and it turns into a hell dimension. And Hela's basically like, you got to do me a solid here. And Danny doesn't really have a choice.
Danny doesn't really have a choice. Here's the thing. And I would say that if you remember correctly, Wells did not set up that favor. That's from a different event involving the Dark Avengers.
Oh,
That is from Utopia, where the Dark Avengers attack Utopia.
shows what I know.
Yeah, we actually have not covered the Utopia event on this podcast. I've thought about that recently. But in the Utopia event, Ares, who's on the Dark Avengers, one of Cyclops' plans is to have a god fight a god. And since he doesn't have any gods, he's like, hey, Danny, you don't have any powers right now. And look, I know you know Valkyrie stuff. Could you talk to Hela about this?
Yeah.
So Hela does her a favor and they fight. Anyway, Danny has to go and do a favor for Hela during Siege and ends up messing with Tyr and the Desir.
Yes, the Desir make their first appearance in this particular issue. They are evil spirits that only eat the ghosts of dead as guardians, which is pretty specific.
Yeah.
So when they show up, they're pretty hungry.
I'm like 99% sure that's just like a Norse mythology thing.
Might be. I don't know. But clearly the Asgardians would like to make their exit as best they can and heroic as possible to Hell. And it's up to Danny to guide them. But Tyr Odinson is not like, I don't know. It's not that he's not ready to go. It's just he kind of wants to keep fighting.
Yeah, I mean that he's like a god of war, so he doesn't really want to stop doing a war.
Well, it turns out he's not completely dead. So Danny is able to...
He's a god. How can you be completely dead? He's only mostly dead.
I don't know how it works, but they, Danny essentially succeeds. They do fight off these monsters.
Danny yells at them that they have to fight her. That is dope, what she does.
Yes, that's pretty great. But she does Hela the favor, and Hela's like, hey, cool, thanks. Like, cool. Go back to your regular book.
This run of New Mutants has a weird situation where Wells does his first story in this, which is the Legion story, immediately goes into the Necrosha crossover, has a 2-issue break, goes into Siege, then goes into Second Coming, and then Zeb Wells can do the rest of the story that he wants to tell, which is, of course, about Inferno.
Right.
The book then goes into Age of X as a crossover, gets new writers for an arc, goes into Fear itself as a crossover, goes into Regenesis, which is less of a crossover and more of just a title. And then it has one more crossover with Exile, or with with Journey into Mystery by the end of it. But this first chunk, it's mostly tie-ins.
Yeah. I still think that Kieran does a good job of kind of nailing the characters here and the voices of the characters. The rest of the New Mutants are very excited to just kind of hang out at a Las Vegas casino and have a good time. I didn't love the artists' depictions. Like, you could tell which character was which. I don't love how each character is depicted. However, once we get into the actual Danny and, Asgardian stuff, I think the art goes like up. It's a lot better when it's focused on them and not the New Mutants.
Absolutely. I think it's I like this story. I don't love it. It's fine.
It's fine. It's light, but it continues this idea that Danny has this ongoing relationship with the avatars of death, if you will, and is being called into this role, which again gives her character like a little bit more depth and mobility and agency to be out there and for different reasons, beyond just who she originally was created to be.
Absolutely. So let's talk about rating this thing, yeah?
Yeah, this is definitely not as high as the last one.
I don't think it's as good as 445, which is the New Mutants Necrosha.
No, that's a lot better than this, actually. I mean, this isn't bad by any means, but it's also just kind of a nothing story. Like there's nothing really learned, I would say. The arc of Danny does not change because of what's happening here,
I'm looking down at 613. We have the Magma and Mephisto date, which I don't buy, but also is more charming than this.
I agree. And above that is the 3 issues featuring the death metal band Discord, which I think is a more fun idea than this. So I do think this is worse than that. But I'm just curious. I mean,
This is worse than the Legion story that kicks off this run. That's at 725.
okay. Yeah. All right. That's probably
But
accurate.
754 is Exiled, the New Mutants Journey into Mystery crossover.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is better than that.
I would agree.
Better than She-Hulk, X-Factor, Secret Invasion?
Yes. If only for art alone.
Not as good as X-Men The Wedding Album, though.
No, it's. Do you think it's better or worse than the?
No, I would say below X-Men The Wedding Album, which is at 743.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was going too high there. So we're in between here. Though, I would say this is better than the issue that's right below that, Deadpool Max Volume 1, Number 4, the Peru issue. I mean, that's beautifully illustrated, but I think I'd rather read this issue.
Let's put this above that Terry and the Morrigan thing from X Factor.
Oh, okay. All right.
Let's just put it right below the Wedding Album. That makes the new 744.
Okay. Our new 744, New Mutants, Volume 3, Number 11. And we got one more that seems like a little bit of a mashup of the two of these stories, but honestly is a little more difficult to explain. This is the Chris Claremont Anniversary Special. Volume 1, Number 1, because there's only one of them.
So, Adam, quick question.
Yeah.
What anniversary is this?
I asked this when this book came out in 2021, and I don't have a good answer for you, but at the time, this was around the same time as that giant Chris Claremont book that they sold exclusively with
the book that advertised for us but didn't pay us enough to actually buy the book.
That is correct. Yes.
It's not like Marvel's going to give us more money. It's fine. We can burn that. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I mean, you could do the math a bunch of different ways, but I really couldn't tell you what March 2021 is supposed to be for anybody. But this is written by Chris Claremont with a group of artists, Bill Sienkiewicz, Sean Chen, Diego Orlotegui, and unfortunately Brett Booth. Inked by Mark Deering, Roberto Poggi, and Adelso Corona. The real, the real showstopper here is the Sienkiewicz pages that
Yeah.
bookends the book.
Here's the thing. Can I tell you something, Adam?
Talk to me.
I knew that we were doing. You had mentioned, oh, let's do that. Like Claremont and Sienkiewicz did some stuff like a few years back with like Danny and all this stuff, and I was like, okay, great, we'll do that. So I read New Mutant War Children.
Oh yeah, okay,
Came out 2 years before this.
yeah.
And I'm gonna say that's not on the list. It is better than what Chris Claremont puts together for us in this one shot, which is Danny at the behest of death going to alternate dimensions, playing what I guess Chris Claremont thinks of as his best hits.
It is wild to see what Chris Claremont wants to revisit in this issue.
Love that for him, by the way. I love that.
Yeah, essentially, this is also an excuse for Chris Claremont to write a Shadow King story, because that is
Everything.
Danny's secret mission here, is to defeat people enthralled by the Shadow King, because Chris Claremont can't get out of a writing gig without talking about the Shadow King.
Chris Claremont loves the Shadow King so much. Unfortunately, has never written a good Shadow King story, but he will not stop trying. And I appreciate that about Christopher.
So, yeah, we've got a possessed. Okay. Gotta break this down. People possessed by the Shadow King in this compilation issue include the 616's Fantastic Four's Reed Richards, the Fantastic Four of 99315 Dr. Doom, the Namor.
Is the 99315 thing from... Okay, that is from Chris Claremont and Salvador Larroca's Fantastic Four run. Yes. Good for them.
Yes. The Namor from 6706 and just Gambit. Back when he was teamed up with, little kid Storm.
Hey. Rogue is also possessed by the Shadow King, but a different Rogue.
Yes. Sorry. Shadow King is impersonating Rogue in her fight with Captain Marvel. But
it's a different Captain Marvel?
I don't know. This is it
has to be a different Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Because she has binary powers.
Yes. She's binary and she's fighting.
Yeah, she wasn't binary. She wasn't binary when she got her powers taken away. And Chris, you know that. I think it's unclear in the Marvel wiki. It's like, well, no, this must be the real one. When really, Mr. Claremont is like, do you have reading comprehension? I put her in a different the script said, put her in a different costume for a reason. You fools. Regardless.
Yeah.
We pop around to a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, and it's mainly nonsense. I mean, these are not this Fantastic Four thing is a run that I'm not convinced a lot of X-Men readers even know he did.
Hey guys, Valeria Richards? That's a Chris Claremont. That's a Mont creation.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I don't think people know that. Remember. And no, am I saying that I've read his Fantastic Four? Absolutely not. I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure secretly I'd probably get some joy out of it. But
some sick satisfaction.
Listen, I've read so many Chris Claremont comics. You think a few more is gonna hurt me?
This one really does a number, though. I mean, it is really trying to hit a lot of Chris Claremont's favorite little corners here. And unfortunately, the Sienkiewicz of it all is only a few fleeting pages. I think there's maybe 4 total. And
but
they're beautiful.
Not only are they beautiful, at the end, Claremont writes Hela and Danny in like a really interesting way. Again, he's going to that similar well of like death comes for us all, and what you do with it is what matters.
Yes.
And I kind of love that. Also, I love that when Hela is explaining that you are actually the Shadow King's adversary and you must destroy him. Danny says, I'm a member of the New Mutants. I do that already.
Right.
Line for line. That's what she says. She tells the goddess of death, I'm already doing that, Hela. This is weird that you're making a whole big deal out of it. Already on top of this one, girl.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, Danny kind of gets like a little bit of a status change at the end of this, and if anybody else were going to follow up on this, this book essentially exists outside of continuity. It is a chance for Claremont to take a lap around some things that he likes. You know, unfortunately, as I mentioned before, a large portion of the last part of this book is illustrated by Brett Booth, and it doesn't look good.
Who's just a jerk. Here's the thing. If people want to know, Brett Booth is just a jerk. Like,
Yeah.
to the best of my knowledge, he didn't hurt anybody. He just sucks.
Yeah, and I don't like his art either.
No,
I mean,
that part's...
it's better here
It's...
than the last time we talked about his art on this show. But that was with Dream's End.
Yeah, I don't want to give him any credit, but there is one shot of Danny where if you don't try and figure out how her feet are working, her like torso up looks great.
Sure.
And she's
Anatomy.
wearing a Dazzler t-shirt.
Yeah, some weird anatomy.
Her knees are insane.
But as to why Danny would visit these particular moments, there is no real internal logic to this. You could tell that it's basically just because Chris Claremont was asked to do this issue and he got to do whatever he wanted, and this is what he wanted to do. So, okay,
I kind of think,
great.
Here's the thing. If I'm Chris Claremont and I've been told again, hey, Chris, we want you to play the hits.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I'd be like this is the same thing that Claremont was doing by the end of his X-Men. He's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to just play the hits. Mm-hmm. I want to do something new and different and fun. And even with the weird amount of like retro series that he's doing, he's not just playing the hits on those. He's doing a new weird story about that exact time. And I appreciate that about Chris, that he is not, if he had his choice, he would never look back. I feel like he would only move forward.
Yeah. I also wonder, you know, we saw when X-Men Legends came out that Chris Claremont was not among the creators in there. And I do wonder if perhaps he took exception to being part of that and said, you know what, I deserve more. You know, and that resulted in perhaps this anniversary special and or the gigantic Paragon collection, which, you know, came out around the same time.
You notice they never did another one of those?
I did. Yeah. No other Paragons, apparently.
Listen, I don't think they understood how little influence we have on the comic buying public.
That's okay.
Because we were their entire marketing scheme, and that's a wild friggin' choice.
Well, they did some stuff with Marvel Unlimited. Anyway.
I don't know what they did.
This is definitely the worst of the batch this week. I can't really recommend this one unless you're just a sicko who like really needs... I mean, listen, by all means, pull it up on Unlimited, check out the beautiful Sienkiewicz pages. But I mean, in terms of a story, unless you are a Claremont sicko who really needs to see every latter piece of his weird post, you know, Claremont run stuff, I don't know what's really here that needs to be
read those Sienkiewicz pages and then skip the rest, and then go read New Mutants War Children, which is better.
Yeah. But that's not really a Danny story, so I don't think
Danny does become Danny Sam Brightwind,
right? But that's more of a full New Mutant story as opposed to just a Danny story, which this one does at least suppose that she's the protagonist of the story. Anyway, I would say this is worse than its 774 New Mutants Fall of the Mutants.
Okay, but New Mutants Fall of the Mutants does have Bird Boy in it.
It's Brain, Zach. Bird Brain.
You and me both know that it's ambiguous and goes back and forth.
This isn't better than the Birth of Krakoa, Journey into Mystery at 779.
No, it's not. You're right. I'm going... This is worse than that issue of Slingers.
Is this worse than the Nova Roma arc of New Mutants at 820?
I'm going to say... I'm gonna say yes, but I don't like that arc.
No,
I think
I don't
Nova Roma's
either.
bad and should feel bad.
Yeah, I do too. But I think we're going to keep going down. You know what? Your beloved Kings of Pain at 854. I don't know. I think this
Mike
might be
Mignola's
better.
covers are doing so much heavy lifting on that book.
This isn't as good as Spider-Man, Power Man, and Storm Smokescreen at 864.
This is worse than New Mutant 75, which tells a story, a bad story, but it tells a story.
Yes. All right, now we're really getting down into it. Here we
This
go.
is better than X Women at 932.
Okay. All right. That's a good floor here. Better or worse than Onslaught at 930.
This is better than Onslaught. Let's not be hasty, Master Brandabuck.
Better or worse than X-Men and the Micronauts at 928, where Xavier doesn't treat Danny very well.
This is better than that also.
Okay.
This is not as good as 922, the comic where Mystique eats a baby off of a waterfall.
I'm going to say this is probably I'm going to say something crazy. I think that New Mutants 86, which is Rusty and Skids versus Vulture, is a little bit more entertaining than this book, but this is better than Wolverine 88, where Wolverine fights Deadpool for the first time.
I'm okay with that.
Great.
You know I like Acts of Vengeance. I think Acts of Vengeance is a great idea, even if it's not always perfectly executed. But Adam, I think that's it for this episode. I think we've just about done it.
We did. And who do we have to thank again for picking Danny Fights Death?
We got Nathan to thank for this.
Thank
Buddy,
you
you can go over to patreon.com/Battle of the Atom, be just like Nathan. Toss a couple of coins right into our coffers. We're at the $5 a month level. That's what comics cost these days, folks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what comics cost these days. And you could instead just give that money to us.
We'll make a whole episode just for you.
Just for you, but everyone else can listen to it too.
Yeah.
You have to share.
Yes.
You are the most special snowflake on this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have to share. It's like when you're in school and it's your birthday, you're not the only one who gets to eat the cake. That's not just a school thing. That's a general birthday thing. Birthdays are about sharing.
Cake is for you, but it's also for your classmates. But it's really also just for you. Anyway.
Nathan, thank you so much. Adam, what do you got going on? Anything you want to plug?
I mentioned it last week, but we did a really fun swimsuit special piece on Comics XF. So if you missed that one, head over there, check that out. You can always follow on social, Adam Reck on Blue Sky and Instagram. And Zach, what are we doing next week?
I am Iron Man.
I thought this was an X-Men podcast.
Okay, well, until then, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survive the experience.
Get it!